Story 1. Watching the sunset at Sala de Uyuni in Bolivia after it rained. The whole salt flat turns into a massive mirror, and it felt like I was standing in the middle of the sky. Unreal. Story 2. Grindelwald, Lauterbrunnen, and the Interlaken area. I was there in the summer. Winter looks beautiful too, but snow is not my thing. Also, Hawaii is a close second. Oahu is amazing on its own, but going on a hike just north of Hilo was like visiting a prehistoric land. Plant leaves bigger than you are, waterfalls, deep valleys. It was like teleporting millions of years back in time. Jurassic Park was filmed in Oahu, I think, but the Hilo coast of the Big Island is even more prehistoric looking. Story 3. This forest in Scotland. I wish I could remember where it was. Near a tall, thin castle on a hill with lots of arrow slits in its walls and a spiral stone staircase going up. Maybe it was because I was a kid, but it felt like the most magical place, with moss-covered stairs that look thousands of years old and the clearest streams. I would love to go back, but Scotland has lots of woods and castles. Story 4. Crater Lake. By day, jump in and open your eyes. It's like swimming in a blue crayon. By night, watch the reflection of the moon appear to dance upon the surface of the lake, as if the spirit of the lake was dancing with her. No drugs. It was magical. Story 5. Aguas Calientes in Peru. The foothills of the Andes Mountains right around Machu Picchu. Just so larger than life, especially for a city boy from America. Story 6. Sleeping in the redwood forest in Northern California. The bed of 4-foot-deep pine needles was like a mattress. The smell of fresh rain was clean and magnificent. The feeling that you are as small as a squirrel in comparison to the 400-foot high tall tree canopy is majestic like a fairy tale. 10 out of 10 recommendation. Story 7. Banff is absolutely stunning, and I got misty-eyed driving through the Great Rift Valley in Malawi at sunset. That said, for my money, I'm taking Camden Yards on a warm, just cloudy enough to get those pinkish-orange sunset clouds. Early summer evening. Story 8. So many places, all very different. The Swiss Alps, Acadia National Park, Yosemite National Park, Santorini, St. John, United States Virgin Islands. All very beautiful in their own way. Story 9. Riding the train from Italy to Switzerland. Switzerland was idyllic. The Matterhorn in the summer, people sunbathing, pristine, all friendly people, vistas made for postcards. Story 10. I'll be the one to say Nevada. I don't remember the exact mountain range, but what was remarkable was that it was spring, and one side of each peak was bright green with new growth, while the opposite side of each peak was purple. The air was clear as can be. I've seen many incredible landscapes in Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and California, but none of them were as interesting as that spot on that day. Story 11. Tasmania. I'm an Australian anyway, but have lived on the mainland my whole life. But Tasmania is just something else. I've never felt a pull toward a place like I do with Tasmania. I'm trying to convince my wife that we need to move there. Story 12. Havasupai. They only give out a few permits for the season, and they sell out pretty much immediately. I tried for about 8 years before finally managing to snag some in 2019. It's a 10-ish-mile hike into the Grand Canyon to get to the campground, but well worth it. Story 13. A few months ago, I watched the sunset on the island of Lanzarote, Canary Islands. It was spectacular. Also, the beaches of Tulum, Mexico were incredible. Story 14. Smoky Mountain National Park. Amazing way to spend a day trip. Even if you are just driving and pulling over at the several pullover spots to admire the view, it's worth it. I haven't been in a decade or so, but I miss all the streams, waterfalls, and swimming holes there are to be found. I just wish more people knew this and would get out of Gatlinburg to see it. Runner-up would be Big Bend National Park. Completely different vibe, but beautiful in its own right. Definitely worth a trip as one of the few places in this country where you can get the full darkness to really appreciate a night sky. That's just from when I went in November a few years ago. I really need to go back when it's springtime to get that full experience. Story 15. Over Labor Day in 1986, while stationed in Germany, we drove from Karlsruhe, Germany to Pisa, Italy. Driving through Switzerland was like being in a movie. Snow-capped peaks, mountain lakes, postcard villages, and some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen. Story 16. Outside, Gorim, Turkey. It is a place where a canyon was filled with volcanic material and then eroded away. It resulted in a landscape filled with cones stretching up from the ground that are hard enough to remain structures but soft enough to tunnel into. It looks like a place from a dwarven fantasy or Star Wars. There is a yearly hot air balloon event there. There are also 10-story deep cities dug into the ground by the ancient Hittites. Inside, the Vatican. The art will blow you away. The architecture is amazing, and you get to see Michelangelo's frescoes. Story 17. Switzerland. Hiking down from Klein Skydeg, the base for Jungfraujoch, during a gorgeous spring afternoon with snow-capped mountains and meadows full of wildflowers. It's almost too much for the mind to take it all in. Story 18. New Zealand, especially Milford Sound and Mount Cook on the South Island and the Glowworm Caves on the North Island. The Choiring on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. Pretty much all of Iceland. Mount Fuji from Lake Kawaguchi in peak cherry blossom season. The Dolomites in Italy, specifically the Val di Funes. I can't pick between these 5. Story 19. Point Lobos in California. Seeing the blue water splashing against the rock and exploding into white clouds. The palette of colors produced by the plants. The sun setting into fog. The rocks teeming with small creatures. It was unfathomably beautiful to me when I first went and every visit thereafter. Story 20. Hiking on the northern edge of Lake Como was the most spectacular and beautiful place I had been to, and then I went to Lake Lucerne in Switzerland a few days later and couldn't understand how it could be even more beautiful than Lake Como. One was a 9.9 and the other was a 10. Story 21. Hospital staff were trying to keep me alive, and I went somewhere, and the music was the most beautiful non-instrumental music I had ever heard. I wasn't told I died, but I suspect I slipped over a bit, because I wanted to stay there and be away from the horrors of being in a hospital. Story 22. There are these charming little towns on the Mediterranean coast of France. Crystal blue waters, most have unique festivals and are not very touristy. It is very easy to see why so many artists find themselves there. Story 23. Wungen, Switzerland. The view from the town is supposedly the inspiration for Tolkien's description of Rivendell. We sat on a balcony in a restaurant looking out over the entire valley on a summer evening, and it was magical. Story 24. Somewhere around the California-Oregon border in December on the Amtrak Coast Starlight, it was like Narnia. Firs weighed down with snow and huge valleys and mountains. Story 25. Flying over the Amazon jungle in Brazil, it had just rained and the sunrise was reflecting these beautiful shimmering golden colors off the jungle. I was stunned. It was so beautiful. Story 26. Seeing the sunrise over the Atlantic is something I will never fail to fall in love with over and over again, but it comes an incredibly close second to driving 2-lane roads through tiny towns in Vermont. The golden rays of the sun play on tall grass moving gently in a lazy breeze, tiny orbs of pollen hovering above, lit up like pearls by the softly diffused light. It was 20 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. Story 27. Athens, Greece. At a rooftop bar, watching the moon rise above the Parthenon, while a guitarist quietly played in the background. I was with my friend Tom. I told him that if he had breasts, we would never leave. Story 28. Redwoods in Northern California. There was something about the dead quiet and massive trees. I swear I felt a surreal vibe out there, like I was wandering through a dream on another planet. Story 29. I've got 4. For the Grand Canyon. Bonus points for the dry air, making it the best place for viewing stars I've ever been to. 3. Iceland. 3 times while I was there I said it felt like I was on a different planet. 2. The Canadian Rockies between Canmore and Jasper. For a long time this was my number 1. 1. Peru. I didn't really want to go, but it was on my wife's bucket list. Everything was incredible there. The people, the food, the history, and the landscapes were mind-blowing. I'd love to go back. 2 weeks wasn't enough. Story 30. One time, my mom and I took a weekend trip to the Painted Hills in eastern Oregon. The trip was fun, but it wasn't the painted hills themselves that were the most beautiful. It was actually a random field with windmills on the way back home. Just miles and miles of open field. It was a perfectly sunny and cloudy day. The road next to us wasn't very busy, and there was a marker showing where to look to see four of the mountains in the region at the same time. I don't know if it was just boredom or sleep deprivation from being in the car for 10 hours straight, but that field was the most gorgeous thing to me for reasons I couldn't explain, no matter how hard I try. That's a core memory for me. Story 31. Japan is absolutely breathtaking. Kyoto, with its old charm, Osaka, with its nightlife, Okinawa, with its beaches, Tokyo, with its city life, and even the rugged outskirts are gorgeously designed and hold historic beauty everywhere you look. Story 32. Lake Tahoe. I remember we went down and stood in the woods a little off the lake so we could get a few pictures. One year, we visited my grandparents in Reno. I have never seen anything that pretty since. I usually hate going outside, but that was something else. Story 33. Haseda Head Lighthouse in Oregon, around sunset and shortly after it rained. I've been to a lot of truly breathtaking places, but that was the only one that felt surreal, bordering on magical. Story 34. Central Spain into East Portugal. Beautiful orange mountain ranges, green valleys, huge free-roaming bulls among endless olive groves, and not a tourist in sight. Story 35. I have a few. Kyoto during autumn, sunset on Santorini, Banff, Oregon coast, a little church on Isla Mujeres, Colonia Uruguay, Swiss Alps, and the Peak of Whistler on a bluebird day. Story 36. Gamak, Gangotri Glacier in the Himalayas, Rann of Kutch, it's like the moon on Earth, Swiss Alps, Phi Maya Bay Area in Thailand, and then, in the middle of cities you find those places of solace. Story 37. Lake Iliana, Alaska, clearest water I have ever seen, snow-capped mountains around 2/3 of the lake, tundra on the other 1/3, the size of a smaller Great Lake. Not a home or person to be found. Took a nap on the tundra and found peace. Story 38. Lighthouse Point in Eleuthera, Bahamas was very beautiful, but Disney altered it by putting in a poor-quality cruise port and damaged a lot of coral in the process. The inlets along the coast of Antarctica were also spectacular. It is impossible to comprehend the sheer size and majesty without seeing it in person. I once sat in the rain for an hour, captivated by the terraced rice fields in Bali. They are a World Heritage Site for a reason. I have been all over the world and seen amazing things, but those are the top 3 that come to mind. Story 39. I always tell people, take the 4:30 a.m. flight from Papeete to Bora Bora just as the sun comes up over the equator. The most incredible beauty I have seen. That island is a paradise. Story 40. Santorini in Greece. Rocky island in the middle of the ocean. Amazing views everywhere you look. Pretty touristic though, so it helps to try to get off the beaten path. Story 41. Tortola Island, British Virgin Islands. Lake Louise, Alberta, Canada. Cathedral Grove, British Columbia, Canada. Costa Rica. Lake Muskoka, Ontario, Canada. Aruba. Victoria Falls, Zambia and Zimbabwe. Story 42. Slovenia. The whole place is like a storybook. Every random little house has things like cozy little flower boxes peeping out of the windowsills and looks like something you'd see on a calendar. The architectural design combined with the well-kept native greenery was so picturesque that it was hard to imagine I was really seeing it. And whenever I expressed this to locals, they almost universally expressed that yes, things were nice they supposed, but Croatia was much more beautiful. I want to go to Croatia someday. Story 43. Miyako Island has beaches for days and is gorgeous, with little alcoves for private snorkeling. It's an amazing place. Sequoia National Park and National Forest, along with Redlands further north, offer majestic trees. Seattle Sound is super peaceful. Story 44. Laukala Island, Fiji. I worked on the construction of the resort in 2007. On Sundays, I would load a kayak with snorkeling gear, bottled water, and food and paddle around the other side of the island to explore the reefs and beaches. An amazing experience. Story 45. The Canadian Rockies. Easily the most scenic drive I have ever been on, not to mention the glacial lakes. Gorgeous turquoise color, especially in autumn when the trees are full of color. Story 46. Bryce Canyon from the top of the amphitheater. Sunrise during snowfall. We went from freezing pitch black to the sunrise, making the snow sparkle like glitter and the rock formations lighting up like a watercolor of blue, purple, red, and gold. Story 47. My partner is from South Tyrol. If you don't know it, it's in the northernmost part of Italy, at the foot of the Dolomites. It's breathtaking in summer, otherworldly in winter, and you get Italian and Austro-Germanic cuisine. Bliss. Story 48. Several years ago, the volleyball team went camping in Lauterbrunnen, Switzerland. One morning, I woke up, unzipped the tent, and caught the sun rising through the valley. To put it simply, I was in awe. It looked like a painting. Story 49. Mountains in Liechtenstein. So beautiful. Stayed in an Airbnb. Looking out during the day and night were both their own different kinds of stunning. And so peaceful. Story 50. The fjords in Norway are awe-inspiring landscapes that make you feel small surrounded by their beauty. On a slightly different note, you can understand how people once believed there were trolls up there when you actually see it. Story 51. Image Lake in the North Cascades in the Glacier Peak Wilderness area also has the most picturesque backcountry toilet I've ever had the pleasure of using. You can't see it on Google Earth, but it's roughly centered here. You sit on the box, there are no walls, and do your business as the whole hill drops away from you into the Suiattle River Valley. On the opposite side of the valley is the 10,000-foot Glacier Peak. I was sitting there, taking a break, and watched two fighter jets fly up the valley below me. 10 out of 10 would visit there again. The other place, which I travel to fairly frequently, is Princess Louisa Inlet on the British Columbia coast. It's absolutely stunning, especially in late spring during the freshet. We gave up counting after we hit over 90 waterfalls coming down into the inlet. Just absolutely gorgeous.